it's a genuine honor to be here today, and I want to thank the organizers, the sponsors. I have not been to the University of Minnesota before, and so this is a real pleasure. It's the work that's going on here is well known and well regarded, and it's to me a perfect place to try to discuss a little bit about green chemistry, where it's going, a little bit about where it's been, but where it's going. And I think that the overarching message is how green chemistry in its essence is in many ways profoundly different from the way that we've pursued environmental and human health protection. So often it's been about what you cannot do, what you're not allowed to do, what you need to stop, what you need to minimize, what you have to reduce, what you have to eliminate, what you have to control, what you have to regulate. And green chemistry is about what you can do, what you can innovate, what you can invent, what you can design, what you can create. And more than anything else, that is the power of green chemistry in so many ways. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I'm really happy to be here. One of them is I recently returned from a trip. I was in Antarctica, and I mentioned that for two reasons. One, there were days when it was much warmer in Antarctica than it is here. But there's a second reason. So I've been lucky enough to be able to talk about green chemistry in just about every country in the world, every continent, except Antarctica. And I believe that I was able to give the very first lecture on green chemistry in Antarctica. So we've got 7 continents now covered, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not bragging, but the audience went wild. He got some really tough questions that time. As you can see, it was a formal affair. So, I'm going to dive into a lot of aspects of green chemistry, but I want to tell you what I'm not going to talk to you about this morning. What I'm not going to talk to you about this morning, as much as I would love to, I'm not going to talk to you about my wonderful research group and all the work that they're doing, how they do all the work at the Center for Green Chemistry and Green Engineering at Yale, or how the point of the center cuts across school of chemistry, engineering, environment, but even more importantly extends into law, public health, communication, school of management, and well beyond. I'm not going to discuss how the work of the center is not simply to create excellent science, although we seek to do that. But we think that if you simply publish a paper in a scientific journal, and it gets its whatever citations, then that in many ways is a failure. That bringing that to practical impact, positive impact on the world is absolutely crucial. So whether it's catalyzing implementation to have commercialization and how we spin up companies, industrial partnerships, and preparing the next generation, of raising awareness. It's all aspects of these. The entire life cycle of transformative innovation is what we seek to do. I'm not going to talk to you about our research areas or about how we're doing work in algal biomaterials, biofuels, integrated biorefinery work, and how we spun out a new company called Greenleaf Bio. I'm not going to talk to you about our water treatment technologies. Even though it can deal with arsenic, selenium, copper, and other metals, and it's probably the next company to be spun out. I'm not going to talk to you about the way that we break down lignocellulose, lignin specifically, so it can be a value-added material, as much as I'd love to. I'm not going to talk to you about safer nano. Not going to talk to you about that, about how you can get all of the sustainability advantages, greater performance, and much less material without all of the implications of transport of the environment, transport across biological membranes. And I'm certainly not going to talk to you about what I consider to be the most important work that I'm personally involved in, and that is how do we structure a new molecular design framework so that chemicals, all chemicals, across categories, are inherently incapable of manifesting toxicity or other types of hazard. Not going to talk about this stuff. Certainly not going to talk about education, how we're building this into policy. Not going to talk to you about how we spin out companies like P2 Science, a new chemical company based on green chemistry and green engineering principles, or how we work with a wide range of corporate sectors, corporate interests, companies with sustainability as we call it the how sustainability, how you operationalize these grandiose ideas and principles into practical operationalization. I'm not going to talk about that. Now, what we're going to talk about is the great grand challenge of sustainability and how transformative innovations of green chemistry and green engineering is a way to meet environmental and economic goals simultaneously. How alignment rather than trade-offs are possible, being demonstrated every day, and where we can go from simply making things a little bit less bad into genuinely using our design tools, our creativity, our innovation to make things genuinely good, sustainable, resilient. Now, when we all talk about sustainability, we know that this is a magnitude that sometimes taxes the imagination to grasp all of the elements of its complexity. But sometimes imagery can help, and I'm going to just focus on a little sliver, and there is no one better at creating this imagery than Chris Jordan. Are many folks in the audience familiar with Chris Jordan? A few. Well, get ready for Chris Jordan, because he gives us a glimpse into one aspect of sustainability. Does anybody want to tell me what they think that this picture represents? Abstract art? Now, let's zoom in. Yeah, those are the 60,000 plastic bags used in the US every 5 seconds. Okay, well, we all know this painting, but it looks slightly different. Zooming in, that would be the 106,000 aluminum cans used in the US every 30 seconds. Sandy Beach, zooming in. Now, those are the 426,000 cell phones disposed of every day in the United States. And if anyone knows me and how often I lose cell phones, you know the middle 6 for all mine. Just from last week. Oh, now here we have a landscape, a moonscape. Now those are the 2 million plastic beverage bottles disposed of every 5 minutes in the US. So we know that waste is just one small sliver. Material flows are just one small sliver. But we need to discuss the material basis of our society and our economy. We have issues. Persistence. I often tell my colleagues and chemistry departments that it is all right to aspire to immortality. It's not good to impart that immortality on the things that you intend. When we think about the consequences of let's be kind, call them durable materials, persistent materials, and creating a plastics giant, concentration of plastics in the northern Pacific, the size of the state of Texas. We have issues. We know that for every minute I'm standing here speaking to you, about 3 tons of the most toxic substances are being delivered directly to the air, water, and land. And that's only, in the US, that's only a small subset of the chemicals in common. So, we know that we've seen headlines on a variety of things, toothpaste, bibs. Oh, shall we just go for it? So we know that there's concern on our current chemicals. We know that our current material basis of our society, with the toxicity, the persistence, the consequences of how we have done things over the past 200 years or so, has tremendous consequences. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those consequences, a lot of time on whether it's endocrine disruption or climate change. I'm going to take on faith that the people in this room recognize that our status quo is somewhere between an absurdity and an obscenity, and it needs to change. And I have to say quite seriously, any defenders of the status quo are not on my team. Change is something that is essential, change is something we need, and innovation is the path to that change. Now, people have dedicated their lives since environmental awareness took place over the past 50 years or so. Bill Ruckelshaus, the first administrator of the EPA, likes to say that back in 1970, when we founded the EPA, the people of Denver knew that the air was so polluted, they just wanted to see the mountains again. The people of Los Angeles wanted to see each other again. Rivers were on fire. We know how egregious and obvious the problems were. So people dedicated their lives to making things better in 2013 than they were in 1970. And things are better in so many ways, in the most obvious ways. But there's so many subtleties that are just as egregious. People that dedicated their lives pledged themselves to do the right things. But what we need to ask ourselves the question is it possible to do the right things wrong? What do I mean by that? Can we move in a direction in dealing with a particular issue, but do it in an unsustainable way? Everybody wants to move toward renewable fuels, of one sort or another, bio-based fuels, and we've shown that we are capable of making biofuels in ways that compete with food, feed, and land use options. Are we doing the right thing by doing it unsustainably? Everybody knows that we need to have disinfected water if we do it with acutely lethal substances that create disinfection byproducts that persist and can cause things like cancer. Are we doing the right thing, disinfecting our water, but doing it in an unsustainable way? Everybody wants to harness the power of the sun, and we're doing it in greater and greater efficiencies, up to close to 40%. But if we're doing it with toxic, depleting rare metals, are we doing the right thing wrong? Are we meeting the needs of increased crop growth with dramatic increases in efficiency? But if we do it with persistent toxic and bioaccumulative pesticides, are we doing the right thing wrong? Are we accomplishing the goals of energy-efficient lighting by introducing neurotoxins like mercury into the manufacturing scheme at the end of life? How did we get to this point? Was it some conspiracy? No. These were urgent challenges. People die by the millions with disinfected water. People were starving by the millions because of lack of food supply. The energy crisis is real, and on and on. These are real and important goals. People who have the best of intentions, excellence in science and technology, and yet, when we have a lack of systems thinking, fragmented reductionist only thinking, these are the kinds of unintended consequences that we often realize. This is one of my favorite cartoons. Short like the hole is an hour in the boat. And I say this for two reasons. One, message from this cartoon is we're all in the same boat. And two, we only have one boat. And so thinking about how we think of the entire system as we approach the great grand issues of our time and the coming generations is profound. It needs to be profoundly different from the questions that we asked for the past 40 or 50 years. Because too often, the questions that we asked historically was, what's the maximum amount of pollution that I can emit to the air without sacrificing regulatory compliance? What is the maximum amount of toxics that I can put in my product and still be on the right side of the law? How many people need to fall ill before a standard needs to be changed? Basically, implicitly, it was all about how environmentally damaging that you can do and still be on the right side of the law, socially and legally acceptable. That's not what sustainable innovation is all about. It's not how bad can you be and get away with it. It's about how innovative you can be and bring all of the performance, all of the function that we want, that we need, and still be good for human health and the planet. As usual, Einstein says it best. Unlike President Keeler, I don't mind quoting others quite a bit. Problems can't be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. And so what was this new level of awareness? In so many ways, for so many people in a community around the world that I'm proud to be a part of, one of the answers was green chemistry. Green chemistry, and I think that most of the folks in this room know a little bit about that, is the design of chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate the use and generation of hazardous substances. If this one sentence is going to define the actions of countless companies, countless research institutions around the world, policymakers and engaged environmentalists and advocates, then it should have some meaning. And perhaps the most important word in this definition is the word design. Because design is a statement of human intention. You simply cannot do design by accident. You need to have a clear understanding of your goals and methods and techniques that are used. The other point that I just want to make about this definition talks about reduce or eliminate the use and generation of hazardous substances. Can you make a process more efficient than using green chemistry? Yes, absolutely. Can you minimize waste using green chemistry? Absolutely. Is that when green chemistry ends? Absolutely not. It's looking at the entirety of the life cycle, from your choices of feedstocks all the way to the end of commercial life and tying it back into cycles. And because of that, it is inherently interdisciplinary, inherently creative. It is looking at innovations. It's looking at solutions rather than simply quantifying problems. So why is it important? Why is there so much activity around the world on this area of investigation? Well, it kind of comes down to this, that all we have in this world is energy and matter. All we have in this world is energy and material. And green chemistry is about the redesign of all of the material basis of our society and our economy, including the materials that we use to generate, store, and transport our energy. It touches pretty much everything. And I don't put this up as an eye chart. I say that the principles of green chemistry are a design framework. It's to show that it's more than a noble wish of let's be good to the birds and the bunnies. It's how do you put these noble goals into practice? How do you actually design the next generation of products, of manufacturing, of systems, so that you can ensure that you're moving in the right direction? I often say that knowing the appropriate direction is so much more important than our reductionist measures of things like efficiency. You can do the wrong thing extremely efficiently. You can do it very fast, you can do it very efficiently, and that doesn't make it the right thing. The compass is more important than the speedometer. And knowing the directionality and the character of our products and processes is absolutely essential. So if I were to go through these 12 principles, which I will not because it takes me at least a semester to do so, I would be, I tried. I would be talking about how we want to make sure that our feedstocks are renewable rather than depleting. I'd talk about how at the end of life things degrade to benign products into the environment. I'd talk about energy selection. I'd talk about atom economy, where every atom that enters into the manufacturing process winds up in the product, and by that time I was done. You'd say, well, that's pretty straightforward. That's pretty much common sense. That's almost obvious. It's probably true. But the question is, does it bear any resemblance to how we do things now? Or at least how we've done things historically? Historically, generally, we know that there are whole cottage industries that have sprouted up to cleanup after wasteful manufacturing processes. We know that roughly between 90 and 95%, as a generalization across all products, that the materials that go into the manufacturing stream, 95% winds up immediately as waste. Within a few weeks, it's up to 95%. We know that so many of our materials are bioaccumulative and persistent. We know that everyone in this room has synthetic chemicals that are building up in our bodies, in our fat tissues, our blood and serum. Everyone. And that many of these are concerned, and we don't know exactly what the risk is from these because we don't really have an understanding of the synergistic effects of these chemicals in combination. We know that. And yet we do this at a time when, as scientists, as engineers, we know how to design molecules so that they degrade and they don't persist in our bodies. We know that the vast majority of our approaches to dealing with issues of sabotage, accident, terrorism at our chemical facilities, at our manufacturing sites, has been to harden the barriers, use guns, guards, and gates, rather than changing the inherent nature of our processes and our materials that we use to make them inherently less vulnerable. So yes, the 12 principles of green chemistry are common sense. Common sense just is not as common yet as it needs to be. So I do say that this is a change in thinking from the circumstantial to the intrinsic. And that hazard needs to be considered a design flaw. What do we mean by circumstantial to the intrinsic? Our approaches to risk reduction, if you will, have often been to deal with the circumstances, how we handle, what uses we allow, how we transport our substances, how do we control exposure, smokestack scrubbers on smokestacks, respirators, gloves, personal protective gear. All of these approaches have two things in common. One, they can, and as a probability function, will fail. And when they fail, the risk goes to its maximum because you have not addressed the hazard side of the equation. Two, they all necessarily have to be a cost drain. They cannot add performance, they cannot add capabilities, they cannot add efficiencies. Contrast that with the intrinsic, where you're actually designing the transformations, designing the molecules to impart these properties of toxicity and sustainability. At the same time as you're addressing your environmental and health issues, you are, and throughout green chemistry, the advances do, increase performance, add new capabilities, add new efficiencies. This is the dirty little secret, or I should say the clean little secret of green chemistry, how you make it more profitable and aligned with economic goals and competitiveness. So, I'd like to just reflect quickly on, since this concept was launched a while back, what kind of progress has been made. There's obviously been a lot of progress here in Minnesota, but it's also happening around the world. For instance, there are at least 5, in many online journals, but 5 scientific journals dedicated to the science and technology of green chemistry, filled up year after year with new innovations across so many different aspects of molecular science. But more importantly, all of those journals that aren't devoted just to this topic are also featuring green chemistry in their journals as well. The increase in papers, I'm sorry I lost my y-axis, that's at about 6,000 on the high end. Papers a year in this area. But also public awareness is happening more than has. Even such great scientific journals as China Daily and USA Today. Are there networks around the world? On every continent. I'm not sure if we can call Antarctica a network quite yet, although those penguins did seem to be organizing. Conferences around the world. Research networks around the world. Now, and at the foundation is the science. Foundation is the new chemistry, the new molecules, the new transformations, the new engineering. What are some of those areas? I'm old enough to know that green chemistry has gone through phases where people said, oh, that green chemistry stuff, that's all about bio-based materials. And then it was, no, that green chemistry stuff is all about aqueous solvents. Now, that green chemistry stuff is all about synthetic methodologies and organic synthesis. Maybe it's about molecular self-assembly. That's what that green chemistry stuff's about. Catalysis, bio-based transformations, alternative energy science, green nano, ionic liquids, degradable polymers, biofuels, reactor design. And I say this because the big important point is that green chemistry is obviously about all of these aspects. All of these aspects of the fundamental science and where these fundamental innovations take you in terms of practical transformation of the material basis of our lives. So these are the fundamental building blocks, the scientific building blocks that allow things to be different tomorrow than today. This is what designing tomorrow looks like. It's not about saying, this thing's bad. I'm going to turn to this next thing on the shelf because it might be a little bit less bad. It's about discovery. Now, I want to tell you a little story. About 15 years ago, maybe more, a whole bunch of the folks that are engaged in this type of things, really wonderful scientists, were sitting around a table. There had to be at least somewhere between a dozen and 2 dozen sitting around waving their hands. And they're saying, look, we've got all of this good science, but it's not being adopted quickly enough by big companies, by large industry. Heavens, what will we do? Some of the hand wringers, and some of you know the phrase, it was 20 years ago today. So some of the folks in the agency, like John Warner, Martin Polycarp, and Robert Gross, a whole bunch of great folks sitting around. Not all of them are on this table, but the point is, what did they do in order to bring that about? Stop that hand wringing. Everyone around that table, that particular table, now has at least one company. I don't know of one of those companies that has gone out of business. We'll see. Startup's a tough gig. We'll see what happens in the long run. But whether it's the Warner Babcock Institute, or Green Ox Catalysis, or Catalytica, or Elements, and on and on and on and on. Those folks launched new companies. Folks here have launched new companies. The path to commercialization is going to take a lot of paths. Where large companies can take advantage of these innovations and build that innovation into their work, fabulous. Where that doesn't fit for a variety of reasons that we can discuss, small, disruptive, small businesses will be arising. There will be a wide range of the way that this transforms our materials that we use. But the important thing is to use all of those paths in design with practical implication in mind. So, business, yeah. Whole bunch of them. Anybody in this room that I left out, I apologize. But also, this was a very interesting finding. Wall Street analysts say that it's going to soar to 98.5 billion. Will it happen? I guess I'm going to be controversial now. Will it happen because of a government thou shalt? Not likely. Will it happen because of the transformative power of creativity and innovation? I think far more likely. Former Vice President Paul Tebow liked to say, business is going to get significantly more profitable through the application of green chemistry. Former CEO Bill Stavropoulos of Dow talked about how you can get a positive return on investment using green chemistry. But let's deal with some of the tough issues. Because we are dealing with a society that we need to face it. There's some myths. There's some myths that we need to overcome, deeply embedded myths. And my favorite quote, I've never made it through an entire speech without a Kennedy quote. Know the name of my daughter. The great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. Too often we hold fast to the cliches of our forebears. We subject all facts to a prefabricated set of interpretations. We enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. What are some of those myths that we are confronting today that we need to overcome? You know, if you want the progress of one life, you're going to have to use hazardous substances. It's the way it is. It's a deeply embedded myth. You know, that green stuff doesn't work quite as well, and it costs more. It's a deeply embedded myth. The nice thing is that every day, green chemistry, people embracing green chemistry, are belying these myths, are proving them to be exactly that, a mythology that needs to be worked out. Let me just give you a few examples. And one of my favorite tools in the green chemistry toolbox is biomimicry. Janine Bendis, if you haven't read Janine's book on biomimicry, just outstanding. Love Janine. She crystallizes so wonderfully. But a couple of the examples that I'd like to give is, we know how we do plastics, materials, adhesives. Currently we have the reactive starting materials, we have toxic initiators. We put in a whole bunch of additives. Flexibility, stiffness, strength. That's not how nature does it. Who's gone to the shore? Who's ever gone to the ocean and tried to pull a mussel off a rock? Anybody? Is it easy? No, it is very hard. It is very difficult. And this mussel business is made from locally available starting materials at very dilute concentrations that are environmentally benign and benign to human health. It's done at room temperature and room pressure, and oh yeah, it does it underwater just to show off. That's what 3+ billion years of design brilliance will get you. So how do we take advantage of these lessons? So about a year and a half ago, I was redoing a bathroom. I don't know if people have ever had to redo a bathroom, but I'm scraping up the tiles, and that ain't easy either. Scraping up those tiles, and I've got this little thing, and scraping my knuckles, and I'm cursing, and I'm swearing, and I'm just getting very, very frustrated, and all of a sudden, I start feeling woozy, and I read a label on the ground that says, only use in a well-ventilated area. So when I wake up, I start thinking, this is not the way nature does it. This is the gecko. The slide's not upside down. He's clinging to the ceiling. He's clinging to the ceiling. Somebody tell me what chemical adhesive he has slathered on his feet. Yeah, no. The gecko uses millions of submicron keratin fibers to create weak force interactions in order to be able to adhere to the ceiling or any other surface. How does he scrape up his feet so he can take the next step? Yeah, you don't have it. It's completely reversible, and you get all of people. Is this inferior performance to those tiles that have been scraping up? Because I don't think so. I think that is superior performance, superior capability. So how do we make a gecko adhesive? And if anyone suggests we go out and we harvest the geckos for their feet, I have to say, as a former EPA official, that is unacceptable. But people did harness the power of gecko. Is anybody here from 3M? Making gecko tape. Learning the lessons, the design brilliance of the gecko, and building this into a product is something that deserves to be applauded. The abalone shell, another one of my favorites. Twice as hard as many of our high-tech ceramics, behaves like a metal under stress. And this is the abalone factory. Once again, non-toxic starting materials and showing off underwater. Is this how we do it to make our high-tech ceramics? Well, roughly the way we do it is heat, beat, and treat. Heating it at 3,000 degrees for 50 hours. How many people in the audience have bones? Okay, several. I don't know about you, but my bones are pretty hard. Okay. How many people have been heated at 3,000 degrees for 50 hours? What's my point? The point is that to get the performance you want, to get the capabilities that you want, the functionality that you want, isn't necessarily going to demand the same type of environmental, energy types of investments that we've gotten used to. Instead, you can set down protein templates that allow, take advantage of that molecular self-assembly. And you might say, oh, I like the one on the right, it's neater. Yeah, but I have to tell you, those gaps are what make it malleable under stress and give it some of its performance. So, these are all brilliant insights and how we take advantage of a powerful tool in the toolbox. But we really need to think seriously about innovation. Very seriously about innovation. We all know that if everyone lived at the same level of development as we do in America, Europe, Japan, etc., that if we were to accommodate, have the rest of the population live at that level of development, we would need the material resources that could only be provided by 3 additional Earths. We're not going to get 3 additional Earths. I checked. So how do we get the transformative innovations? The 5x, the 10x, 5-fold, 10-fold increases. Well, a friend of mine sent me this. It was about an event that happened, I'm told, in Sweden, where a little van went into the harbor, off the dock. Luckily, nobody was hurt. But they needed to get the van out, so they brought in the crane. Seems to be going all right. Good. They got the car. All's well. Oh! All right. This is a room full of problem solvers. How do we get that crane out? Bigger crane. Thank you. Bigger crane. Now that's a crane. Thank you. Good Americans. Thank you. Einstein says it best. Santa's doing the same things in the same way and expecting different results each time. Here's the question. Are we doing the same things the same way and expecting different results? Are we trying to make our unsustainable products and processes a little bit less bad, a little bit more efficient? The fundamental redesign, the transformative innovations, is what we really need to change the equations. If we are going to get off the unsustainable trajectory that we're on, we're going to need to think about the inherent nature. Yes, the inherent nature, not the circumstances, but the inherent nature of our materials. So, transformative innovation. We'll go through a few things quickly. Transformative innovation. What do we mean by transformative innovation? Well, one of the approaches that people say about transformative innovation is that products can evolve to ideality. Ideality being that you can get all of the function, all of the performance of a product without the product existing itself anymore. What did he just say? It's actually not so crazy. Most of us grew up with telephone wires lining the streets. Most of us have some version of this in our pocket. Getting all of the function of the telephone wires without the telephone wires generally existing anymore. How do we transform this into green chemistry, green engineering? Well, an example is we know that the decaffeination of coffee used methylene chloride. Does anybody know if there's anything wrong with methylene chloride? Okay, so let's just say it might be a carcinogen. I haven't gone into a Starbucks and heard anybody say, I like a venti latte with a little bit of a carcinogen in it. So we moved away from that. We started using CO2. Supercritical CO2 extracts the caffeine. CO2 is even considered a solvent by FDA. This is the incremental improvement. What's the transformative leapfrog? This is a coffee bean bush that produces coffee beans without caffeine. This is a natural hybrid, as other genetically engineered versions, getting the performance of the solvent without the solvent existing at all. We know that dyes have concerns for the materials that are used up front and the waste products at the end. Can you get the performance of color? These are the most brilliant hues, but there are others that are much better. The performance of color without the dyes. What dye is in a peacock feather? There's no dyes in peacock feathers. Using refraction, natural geometric refraction of light in order to produce brilliance and color. I put this example up of a generic laundry detergent that is of no particular brand. Sorry. We know we had some problems with phosphate, so we moved to more concentrated detergents to avoid eutrophication and contributing to hypoxia. That was our efficiency incremental improvement. It's no longer science fiction to discuss self-cleaning clothes. This actually comes out of DARPA, some of the next generation soldier type of work. I bring this up for a reason. Is the company that makes laundry detergent going to be the company that makes self-cleaning clothes? Unlikely. There's a great Dilbert cartoon where Dilbert's sitting there in the first panel and it says, company without a business plan. And the phone's ringing and he's looking at the phone and he says, what should I do? What should I do? The next panel is company with a business plan. The phone rings, Dilbert picks it up and says, we don't do that. Knowing that sometimes the most important disruptions you can do is disrupting yourself, because there are, whether you are a company, whether you're an academic institution, whether you are a federal agency, whether you are an NGO, an advocacy group, we will need to be thinking differently. Okay, so you want to make an environmentally benign lawnmower, maybe it runs on waste corn oil or solar powered. It's now no longer science fiction to have grass that grows to a certain height and stops. All the performance without the product existing. The USX tower, instead of having the typical coatings to protect it, it has a controlled patina of rust that is stable and does it without coatings. We know that there's very responsible action taken by a company to move away from perfluorinated repellents, stain repellents, and looked at things like the lotus leaf. The lotus leaf doesn't perfluorinate its leaves. It looks at creating that through, again, geometry and surface area, so that the water beans up and rolls off and cleans. That's nice for lotus leaf. What about other advances? Yeah, when it's transformed into lotus sand paint, that's used more widely in Europe, and you use it on buildings to have self-cleaning buildings, it becomes real. I'm going to finish with just a couple examples of disruptive innovation. This is a new journal that I'm lucky to be a part of the editorial board, Disruptive Science and Technology. When we step back and we hear about the real transformations that are upon us, we need to think about leapfrog technologies, transformative innovations are wonderful. Your leapfrog can leap in the wrong direction too. So when we hear about great grand new innovations, they need to be coupled with a fundamental sustainable design framework, or you are just going to get to that unsustainable endpoint a lot faster. So thinking about this design. Some of these wonderful little innovations, sprouts imaging. An Army Ranger and an MIT student got together, took technology from the military and said, how do we understand what's inside a burning building, for instance, without going in? And having this ball go in there with all of these cameras, beaming back complete imagery, sorting it out, complete imagery, so that you know exactly where people are, what's burning in real time on your handheld. Sensor technology, awareness, that type of real-time integrated awareness is part of what makes natural systems resilient. Tying into our capabilities of awareness so that we can be responsive, so that we can be self-healing, is going to be important to resilience. Now, 3D printing, replicator, MakerBot. Who's heard of the MakerBot? Okay, MakerBot is pretty awesome. 3D printing, you can print the same way you used to use a printer, great objects, three-dimensional objects. So, love it. You can do it in metal, wood, ABS, different types of plastics. Fabulous, right? So I was loving this because my mind's just going crazy with all of the things that you can do right in your garage, right in your house, And then I realized most of what I've been seeing is, okay, you can make a nice little chess piece replacement. You lose the knight, okay. And knickknacks, trinkets, oh, here's a replica of the Taj Mahal. What good's that? I'm feeling a little bit better about it. Why am I feeling a little bit better about it? 3D printing has just printed, a functioning liver. Okay, setting down the channels with sugar scaffolds in order to create that functionality, printing cells into liver cells into creating a functioning liver. This is at MIT, I believe the University of Tokyo just had a functioning kidney printed. So, letting our minds go to where this could lead. If you're not tickled by 3D printing a functioning liver, then how about the planned 3D printed house? This was just we saw this on CNN yesterday. This is planned out of the Netherlands, and how you 3D print a house. This is going to be built over the next several months. The idea of synthetic biology. Again, no longer science fiction. Craig Ventnor, synthetic genomics, other groups are now creating new forms of life, new cells, designing new forms of life. What this means can be either extremely positive or extremely negative, but I'm not sure that any of these types of transformative innovations are going to be irrelevant. And the only way to ensure that we're going to be moving on a sustainable trajectory is to harness the power of innovation to make sure that we are moving in a sustainable direction. So why am I the most optimistic person in any room that I'm ever in with regard to sustainability? It's because when I told you that all we have in this world is energy and matter, I lied. We have creativity, we have spirit, we have commitment, we have perspective, we have moral fabric, we have ethics, we have brilliance. And we will make these changes because we can and because we must. My final Kennedy quote is from Robert F. Kennedy. Some see the world as it is and ask why. Others dream of a world as it could be and ask why not. Why not?